The morning alarm echoed through the council chambers as Tae-jin stared at his screens. For 3 weeks he had been watching the humans with growing worry. The newest species to discover space travel was acting strange. Very strange. Tae-jin worked as a xenobiologist for the Galactic Council. His job was simple: study new species and help them join the galaxy peacefully. For 3,000 years this process had worked perfectly. Every species learned the same lesson quickly. In space you negotiate or you die. But humans were different. The first sign came when Captain Hyojin's ship, Soul's Pride, entered Netherian space. The Netherians were an ancient water-based species. They had claimed that sector of space for their breeding grounds 2,000 years ago. Every species in the galaxy knew to stay away during spawning season. The humans didn't know. That was normal. New species made mistakes. What happened next was not normal. When the Netherian patrol ships found Soul's Pride, they sent the standard message: "You have entered sacred spawning grounds. Leave immediately or face consequences." Tae-jin expected the usual response. New species always panicked when they made first contact. They would apologize, leave quickly, and ask for forgiveness. Then months of careful negotiations would follow. Instead, Captain Hyojin sent back a simple message: "We didn't know this was your territory. We're mapping this sector. We'll be done in 6 days." The Netherian commander couldn't believe it. Neither could Tae-jin. The human ship was small and alone. It carried basic weapons that looked like toys compared to Netherian technology. Yet the captain was refusing to leave. The Netherian commander tried again. This time, Ambassador Guansu spoke directly through the translation system. His voice carried the authority of someone who had negotiated peace between star systems. "Captain Hyojin, I am Ambassador Guansu of the Netherian Republic. You must understand the seriousness of this situation. These waters are sacred to my people. Your presence here could cause a diplomatic incident that affects multiple species." Tae-jin watched the communication screen, waiting for the human to apologize and leave. Surely they would understand now. Captain Hyojin's response was even shorter than before. "No, just one word. No explanation. No apology. No fear." Tae-jin's tentacles went cold. In his 50 years of studying new species, he had never seen anything like this. The news reached Council Chairman Do-hyun within an hour. Do-hyun was famous throughout the galaxy as the greatest diplomat who ever lived. He had stopped wars between species that couldn't even breathe the same air. He had created peace treaties between races that spoke in colors and others that communicated through smell. Do-hyun called an emergency meeting. The council chamber filled with representatives from 12 different species. Each had evolved on different worlds under different stars, but they all shared one thing. They all believed in negotiation. "Explain this to me again," Do-hyun said to Tae-jin. His voice was calm, but his eyes showed confusion. Tae-jin pulled up the communication logs. The human ship entered Netherian space by accident. When asked to leave, they refused. When Ambassador Guansu explained the situation, they still refused. "They're not even trying to negotiate." The chamber fell silent. Baesung, the military advisor, spoke first. "Perhaps they don't understand our technology. Maybe they think they can fight us." "I don't think so," Tae-jin replied. "I've been studying their communications. They're not stupid. They know they're outgunned. They just don't care." Do-hyun studied the reports. "What do we know about their society?" "They use negotiation and compromise among themselves," Tae-jin explained. "Their governments work through complex systems of discussion and agreement. But when dealing with outsiders, they seem to follow completely different rules." Council member Yong-soo, a psychologist from the Mindari Collective, raised a crystalline hand. Could this be a form of mental illness? Perhaps their species suffers from some kind of collective disorder that prevents rational thinking. Do-hyun considered this. "Let me speak to their government directly." The call to Earth took 2 days to arrange. President Nare appeared on the main screen looking calm and friendly. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. She looked completely reasonable. "President Nare," Do-hyun began, "thank you for speaking with us. We need to discuss your ship in Netherian space." "Of course," she replied. "Captain Hyojin told me about the situation. I understand the Netherians are upset." "Then you'll order your ship to leave?" President Nare's smile never changed. "I'm afraid not. Captain Hyojin is conducting important scientific research. We won't abandon it just because someone else claims to own empty space." Do-hyun felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: complete confusion. But surely you understand that this could lead to conflict? We hope not, President Narration said. We don't want to fight anyone, but we also won't let others tell us where we can and cannot go. The conversation continued for an hour. President Narration was polite, logical, and completely unmovable. She answered every question clearly. She understood every consequence Do-hyun explained. She simply didn't care. After the call ended, the council sat in stunned silence. They're not crazy, Do-hyun finally said. There's something else entirely. 3 days later, the situation got worse. The Vorthak Collective, a proud warrior species made of living crystal, decided to solve the problem themselves. They sent a squadron of their best ships to remove the human miners who had started working in their asteroid belt. Commander Jin Woo led the human mining operation. His ships were small and looked fragile compared to the massive Vorthak vessels. The crystal being sent the standard warning. Human vessels, you are mining in Vorthak territory. Surrender your equipment and leave, or we will take it by force. Jinwoo's response was broadcast across the entire sector. Thank you for the warning. We respectfully decline. The Vorthak commander couldn't believe it. His ships had shields that could stop stars from exploding. His weapons could crack planets in half. The humans had mining equipment and basic tools. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, the Vorthak squadron was floating debris. The human miners were not only alive, but already salvaging the wreckage. Jinwoo sent a message that shocked every species in the galaxy. Thank you for the technology upgrade. We'll put your equipment to good use. News of the Vorthak defeat spread faster than light itself. For the first time in 3,000 years, a species had not only refused to negotiate, but had also won a fight against a council member. Tai-jin studied the battle recordings with growing horror. The humans hadn't just fought to defend themselves. They had fought to completely destroy their enemies. They used tactics that prioritized winning over everything else, including their own safety. Do-hyun called another emergency session. This time, representatives from every major species in the galaxy attended. Even the mysterious Shadow Imperium sent an observer. We have a problem, Do-hyun announced. Humanity is either the most dangerous species we've ever encountered, or they know something we don't. Baesung presented his analysis of human military capabilities. They don't fight like any species we've seen before. They don't try to minimize damage or preserve infrastructure. They fight to win completely and permanently. The chamber erupted in nervous chatter. Species that had never agreed on anything suddenly found themselves united in fear. What do they want? Asked the representative from the Luminian Empire. Tai-jin had been studying this question for weeks. That's the strange part. They don't seem to want anything from us. They're not trying to conquer territory or steal resources. They just want to be left alone. Then why won't they negotiate? Do-hyun asked. Tai-jin looked at his data one more time. I think they don't believe negotiation works. The meeting ended with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. For the first time in galactic history, a species had refused to join the peaceful order, and they had the power to back up their refusal. As the representatives left, Do-hyun stayed behind staring at the star charts. Somewhere out there, humans were continuing their expansion into space. They weren't asking permission. They weren't seeking approval. They were just taking what they wanted, and nobody knew how to stop them. The reports kept coming. Each one made the situation worse. Commander So-young had built a research station near a pulsar in Luminian space. The Luminians were beings made of pure energy who worshipped stars as gods. The pulsar was their most sacred site, a place where they had prayed for 10,000 years. When the Luminian high priest demanded the humans leave, So-young's response was now familiar. We're conducting important research. We'll be finished when we're finished. The Luminians offered to share their own research. They offered to teach the humans everything they knew about pulsars. They offered money, technology, even their own sacred texts. So-young thanked them politely and continued her work. 2 sectors away, Minho was leading human colonists to a planet the Council had designated as neutral space. The planet sat between 3 different species' territories and served as a buffer zone to prevent conflicts. The Council sent urgent messages. The planet was off limits to everyone. Colonizing it would upset the careful balance that had kept peace for centuries. Minho read the messages and began unloading his ships anyway. Tai-jin worked around the clock, trying to understand the pattern. Every human response was the same. They would listen politely to complaints. They would acknowledge other species' concerns. Then they would do exactly what they wanted to do. They're not being deliberately rude, he reported to the council. They seem to genuinely believe they have the right to go anywhere and do anything in space. Do-hyun studied the latest reports with growing frustration. Have you found any way to communicate with them? Any common ground? I've tried everything, Tae-jin replied. I've offered them trade agreements, technology exchanges, even full membership in the council. They always say the same thing. Thank you for the offer, but we don't need your permission. Young-soo, the psychologist, had been studying human behavior for weeks. I think I understand the problem. Most species develop space travel after learning to cooperate with other species on their homeworld. Humans developed it while they were still fighting among themselves. What does that mean? Do-hyun asked. It means they think of space as a place to compete, not a place to cooperate. They're not trying to join our civilization. They're trying to build their own. The implications were terrifying. If humans saw space as a battlefield instead of a community, there was no way to predict what they might do. The situation reached a breaking point when Admiral Dong-min arrived at the council station. He came alone in a ship that looked like it was built for war. His message was simple. He wanted to talk. Do-hyun met him in the main diplomatic chamber. Admiral Dong-min was a tall man with gray hair and steady eyes. He moved like a soldier but spoke like a politician. Chairman Do-hyun, he said with a slight bow. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Admiral Dong-min, Do-hyun replied carefully. We need to discuss your species' recent actions. Of course. I understand you have concerns. Do-hyun had prepared for this moment. He had authorization to offer humanity everything they could possibly want. Territory, resources, technology, even a permanent seat on the council. We're prepared to make you a very generous offer, he began. Full membership in the Galactic Council. Access to all our trade networks. Technology sharing agreements. Territorial guarantees for any space you currently occupy. Admiral Dong-min listened patiently. When Do-hyun finished, the human smiled. That's very kind of you, but we don't need your permission to exist. It was the same response every human gave. Do-hyun felt his patience breaking. Admiral, surely you understand that the galaxy is not empty. Other species have been here for thousands of years. There are laws, treaties, agreements that keep peace between hundreds of different civilizations. I understand that perfectly, Admiral Dong-min replied, and we respect your right to make those agreements among yourselves. But we never agreed to follow them. Then what do you want? Admiral Dong-min thought for a moment. We want the same thing every species wants, to survive and grow. The difference is we plan to do it whether you approve or not. The meeting ended with no agreement. As Admiral Dong-min prepared to leave, Do-hyun asked one final question. What happens when your expansion conflicts with other species? What happens when you run out of empty space? The human's answer chilled Do-hyun to his core. Then we'll deal with that problem when it comes. After the admiral left, Do-hyun called an emergency session with the council's military leaders. Bae-sung had been studying human technology and tactics since the Vorthak incident. They're advancing faster than any species in recorded history, Bae-sung reported. Every piece of technology they capture gets reverse-engineered and improved. Their industrial capacity is growing exponentially. How is that possible? Do-hyun asked. They seem to approach technology differently than we do. Most species develop new tools slowly and carefully, making sure they're safe before using them. Humans build things as fast as they can and figure out the safety issues later. Tae-jin had more disturbing news. I've been monitoring their communications. They're not just expanding randomly. They have a plan. A big one. What kind of plan? I'm not sure. But they're building infrastructure on a massive scale. Shipyards, factories, research stations. It's like they're preparing for something. Do-hyun felt a cold fear growing in his chest. Preparing for what? I don't know. But whatever it is, they think it's going to require a lot of ships. The council faced an impossible choice. They could try to contain humanity through diplomatic pressure. But the humans had already proven they didn't care about diplomatic pressure. They could try to contain them through military force, but the Vorthak defeat had shown that might not work either. Or they could do something that had never been done in galactic history. They could call for help from outside the council. Do-hyun spent 3 sleepless days considering the options. Finally, he made the call that would change everything. Messages went out to every major power in the galaxy. The militaristic Kazakh Dominion, the hive-minded collective that had once been led by an AI called Su-Jin, even the mysterious Shadow Imperium that had avoided galactic politics for 1,000 years. The message was simple. Humanity posed a threat to galactic civilization. They had to be stopped. One by one, the responses came back. Every major power agreed to join the alliance. For the first time in galactic history, species that had been enemies for millennia were willing to work together. The reason was simple. Humans scared them all. Planning began immediately. The combined fleets would be the largest military force ever assembled. Over 10,000 ships from 16 different species. Weapons that could destroy stars. Shields that could stop black holes. Surely no single species could stand against such overwhelming force. Baisong coordinated the tactical planning. The target would be New Busan, a human colony in a strategically important system. If they could capture it quickly, they could force humanity to negotiate. As the Alliance fleet gathered, a message arrived from New Busan. Colonial Governor Junho had sent a simple communication to the Alliance commanders. "We're aware you're coming. We look forward to meeting you." The message was polite and friendly. It sounded like an invitation to a party, not a response to an invasion threat. Baisong studied the message with growing unease. Either the humans were incredibly brave or they knew something the Alliance didn't. Admiral Hai Jin, now promoted to command of human fleet operations, held a press conference that was broadcast across human space. Her message was calm and matter-of-fact. "We've been watching your alliance form. We're not interested in conquest, but we're also not interested in being conquered. Do what you feel you must." The transmission ended with footage that shocked every intelligence analyst in the alliance. Massive construction projects were underway around multiple human star systems. Not just ships, but entire orbital shipyards appearing seemingly overnight. Tae-jin watched the footage with growing horror. How many ships are they building? His analysis computer gave him an answer that seemed impossible. At current construction rates, they'll have 50,000 ships within 6 months. Do-hyun stared at the numbers. That's impossible. No species can build that fast. Humans can, Tae-jin replied quietly. They're not building ships the way we do. They're building them like they build everything else. Fast, cheap, and in massive quantities. The Alliance would attack with 10,000 ships against a species that was building 50,000. For the first time since the crisis began, Do-hyun wondered if they had made a terrible mistake. The news of the coming battle spread across the galaxy faster than ships could fly. Every species, from the smallest trading outpost to the largest empires, watched their communication screens with growing fear. Baisong stood in the command center of the Alliance flagship, surrounded by tactical displays showing the largest military force in galactic history. 10,000 ships from 16 different species, each one armed with weapons that could crack planets. The combined firepower could destroy entire solar systems, yet he felt afraid. The reports from intelligence teams made no sense. Human industrial capacity was growing so fast that their computers couldn't keep track of it. New shipyards appeared every day. Factories the size of moons started producing ships within weeks of being built. How is this possible? Baisong asked Tae-jin during their final planning session. Tae-jin had been studying human industrial methods for months. They don't build like we do. Most species design one perfect ship and then build copies very carefully. Humans design a basic ship and then improve it while they're building thousands of copies. That should make their ships weaker. It does, individually. But they compensate with numbers and constant upgrades. By the time we finish building one perfect ship, they've built 100 good ships and made them all better. The Alliance fleet began its final approach to New Busan. Intelligence reports showed only 200 human ships defending the colony. The odds seemed impossible to overcome. Colonial Governor Junho's response to their final ultimatum was broadcast across the galaxy. "We appreciate the warning. Our answer is no." The battle began at exactly 14:30 Galactic Standard Time. Baisong expected a quick victory. 200 ships against 10,000 was not a battle. It was an execution. The Alliance opened fire with enough energy to sterilize a continent. The human ships didn't die. Instead, they moved in patterns that defied everything Baisong knew about space combat. They didn't try to protect their strongest ships or preserve their formation. They attacked like a swarm of angry insects, focusing all their fire on specific targets. Within the first hour, the Alliance lost its command ship. How did they get through our shields? The backup commander demanded. Taijin studied the battle recordings with growing shock. They're not trying to overwhelm our defenses. They're targeting the specific frequency generators that power them. That's impossible. Those frequencies are classified. Only our own engineers know them. Apparently, human engineers figured them out. The battle continued for 4 hours. When it was over, the Grand Alliance fleet was either destroyed or fleeing. Of the 10,000 ships that had attacked, fewer than 500 escaped. The humans had lost 37 ships. Junho's message after the battle was broadcast to every government in the galaxy. To all species watching this, we did not start this fight. We did not want this fight, but we finished it. We hope this ends the matter. It didn't end the matter. It made everything worse. Taijin's analysis of the battle revealed something that terrified every military commander in the galaxy. The humans hadn't just fought defensively. They had been testing Alliance capabilities. Every weapon fired, every tactic used, every piece of technology deployed had been recorded and analyzed. They turned our attack into a research project. Taijin reported to the Emergency Council session. They now know exactly how our best weapons work and how to defeat them. Du-Hyun felt the weight of his mistakes crushing down on him. What do they want from us? The answer came 3 days later in a transmission from President Narration herself. Chairman Do-Hyun, we regret the recent violence. We hope it can be avoided in the future. We're willing to discuss coexistence, but the terms are not negotiable. Do-Hyun listened to the terms with growing horror. We will continue expanding into space that we consider unoccupied. We will defend ourselves against any aggression with whatever force is necessary. We will not submit to external authority or accept limits on our growth. In return, President Narration continued, we offer something the galaxy has never had. Absolute protection from external threats. What external threats? Do-Hyun asked. The transmission that followed changed everything. Data flooded the Council's computers. Massive energy signatures detected at the edge of the galaxy. Movement patterns unlike anything any species had ever seen. Ships, if they could be called ships, the size of moons. We call them the Devourers, President Narration explained. They're a nomadic species that travels between galaxies, consuming everything in their path. They've destroyed at least 17 galaxies in their journey toward us. Youngsik, the human xenobiologist who had been studying the approaching threat, provided more details. They convert matter directly into energy to fuel their journey. A single Devourer ship can consume an entire solar system in weeks. How long do we have? Do-Hyun asked, his voice barely a whisper. 6 months until they reach the outer rim, maybe 8 months before they start consuming inhabited systems. The council chamber fell silent. Every representative stared at the data, trying to comprehend the scale of the threat. How do you know about this? Do-Hyun finally asked. President Nare's next words explained everything. Because we've fought them before. The revelation hit the council like a physical blow. Earth was not humanity's first world. They were refugees from a galaxy already consumed by the Devourers. They had been preparing for this threat since the day they arrived. That's why you refused to negotiate, Do-Hyun said, understanding finally dawning. You weren't being aggressive. You were preparing for war. Every day we spent in diplomatic discussions was a day we couldn't spend building defenses. President Narration confirmed. We tried to warn you through our actions, but you interpreted preparation as aggression. General Kyung-soo, humanity's newly appointed Minister of Galactic Defense, appeared on the screen beside President Narration. We're willing to lead the defense of this galaxy, he said. But if we're going to do this, we do it our way. Total war doctrine. No negotiations with the enemy. No retreat, no compromise. The terms were harsh but simple. All species would maintain their internal governments, but humanity would command all military operations. Resources would be shared freely. Ships would be built according to human designs. Most importantly, there would be no attempts to negotiate with the Devourers. They don't negotiate, General Kyung-soo explained. They don't take prisoners. They don't make deals. They consume everything and move on. The only way to stop them is to destroy them completely. Do-Hyun looked around the chamber at the representatives of 12 different species. Each one was struggling with the same choice. Submit to human authority or face extinction alone. One by one they agreed. The Vorthak Collective, humbled by their defeat, were the first to pledge their fleets. The Netherians followed, offering their advanced underwater construction facilities. Even the proud Luminians agreed to share their energy manipulation technology. Bei Sung found himself working as deputy to Insu, a human tactical coordinator who had spent his entire life studying the Devourers. The transition was jarring. Human military doctrine was unlike anything he had studied. "We don't fight to preserve territory or capture resources," Insu explained during their first planning session. "We fight to eliminate threats completely. If something tries to kill us, we kill it first and make sure it can't try again." Construction began immediately. Human shipyards worked around the clock, producing vessels designed not for exploration or trade, but for pure destruction. The ships were ugly, functional, and built to be replaced quickly when destroyed. Every species contributed what they could. Vorthak crystal technology provided stronger hulls. Luminian energy systems powered more efficient weapons. Netherian underwater construction techniques allowed shipyards to be built inside gas giant atmospheres, hidden from detection. Taejin worked with human scientists to analyze Devourer technology. The data was terrifying. The approaching ships were not just large, they were intelligent. They could adapt to new weapons, learn from their mistakes, and coordinate their attacks across vast distances. "How did you fight them before?" Taejin asked Dr. Hua Young, the lead human xenobiologist. "We didn't," she replied quietly. "We ran. We built as many ships as we could, loaded them with as many people as we could carry, and fled before they reached our homeworld. Most of the fleet didn't make it. Then how do you know how to fight them?" Dr. Hua Young showed him recordings from humanity's last galaxy. Worlds consumed in hours, entire civilizations vanishing as their stars were drained of energy. But also something else, brief moments where the Devourers had been hurt, forced to retreat, even destroyed. "We learned from our mistakes," she said, "and we learned from theirs." As the combined fleet took shape, Admiral Heejin moved to the galactic rim to meet the approaching threat. Her flagship was surrounded by hundreds of thousands of ships, crewed by every species in the galaxy. Her final message before the battle was broadcast to every world. "This is Admiral Heejin of the Galactic Defense Fleet. We go now to meet an enemy that has never been defeated. They have consumed 17 galaxies. They will not consume this one." The transmission ended with a simple statement that would be remembered for generations. "We are not negotiating their surrender. We are ensuring they never threaten another galaxy again." The edge of the galaxy was cold and empty. Between the last stars and the void of intergalactic space, Admiral Heijin waited with the largest fleet in galactic history. Behind her, 300,000 ships stretched across light years of space. Every species in the galaxy had contributed their best vessels and their bravest crews. Vorthak crystal ships gleamed like jewels. Luminian energy beings powered vessels made of pure light. Netherian bioships pulsed with living energy, and everywhere human ships filled the gaps. Ugly, functional vessels built for one purpose: to destroy the Devourers completely. Taejin stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the sensor displays with growing dread. The Devourer fleet was massive beyond comprehension. Thousands of ships, each one the size of a small moon, moved through space like living things. "How many?" Admiral Heijin asked quietly. 7,000 confirmed," replied Commander Jae-won, the human sensor specialist. "Possibly more hiding behind the larger ones." The math was simple. 7,000 Devourer ships against 300,000 defending ships. The defenders had overwhelming numbers, but the Devourers had overwhelming size. Each enemy vessel could probably destroy 100 defender ships before being stopped. "Begin deployment pattern Omega," Admiral Heijin ordered. The fleet began to move. Instead of forming traditional battle lines, the ships scattered into small groups spread across thousands of cubic light years. It looked like chaos, but Taejin recognized the pattern from human tactical manuals. "You're not trying to stop them," he realized. "You're trying to surround them." "Correct," Admiral Heijin replied. "The Devourers expect us to defend specific points. Instead, we're going to attack from everywhere at once." The first contact came 18 hours later. A Devourer scout ship encountered a small group of Vorthak vessels near a dead star system. The engagement lasted 3 minutes. When it was over, the Devourer ship was gone, but so were 47 Vorthak vessels. "One ship," Taejin whispered. "One ship destroyed 47 of ours?" Admiral Heijin studied the battle recordings with no expression. "Expected losses. Send the data to all fleet units. Update targeting priorities. More contacts followed. Each one taught the defenders something new about Devourer capabilities, and each one cost lives. The enemy ships could absorb incredible amounts of damage. Their weapons could destroy anything they could target. Worst of all, they learned from each encounter. After the 5th engagement, the Devourers stopped sending scout ships. Instead, they advanced as a single massive formation. Impossible to surround or outmaneuver. They're adapting faster than we hoped, Commander Insu reported during the tactical briefing. They figured out our dispersal strategy. Good, Admiral Hyejin replied, surprising everyone. Now we know they can think. That means they can make mistakes. The main battle began 60 hours after first contact. The Devourer fleet advanced toward the galaxy's spiral arms like a wave of destruction. Ahead of them, space itself seemed to die. Stars flickered and went out. Planets cracked and crumbled. Even empty space became somehow less real, so defending fleets struck from 12 different directions simultaneously. Tijin watched the battle unfold on tactical displays that showed volumes of space larger than entire star systems. Thousands of ships engaged across distances that took light minutes to cross. Energy weapons that could boil oceans fired continuously. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers against the darkness. The Devourers were everything the humans had warned they would be. Their ships shrugged off attacks that could destroy planets. Their weapons reached across impossible distances to vaporize entire squadrons. When damaged, they seemed to repair themselves by consuming nearby matter. But the defenders had advantages too. Human tactical doctrine emphasized speed and numbers over individual ship strength. When a Devourer ship focused on destroying one group of attackers, 3 other groups would strike from different angles. The battle raged for 6 days. On the first day, the defenders lost 30,000 ships. The Devourers lost 3. On the second day, new tactics began to work. Concentrated attacks on specific points could overwhelm even Devourer defenses. The defenders lost 20,000 ships. The Devourers lost 50. By the third day, the learning curve began to favor the defenders. Captured Devourer technology was reverse-engineered in hours and deployed in new weapons. Human shipyards produced replacement vessels faster than they could be destroyed. The defenders lost 15,000 ships. The Devourers lost 200. On the 4th day, something unexpected happened. Admiral, Commander Jaewon reported, his voice filled with disbelief. The Devourers are retreating. Taejin looked at the tactical display. It was true. The massive enemy formation was falling back toward the galactic edge. Ships that had seemed unstoppable were running away. Why? Admiral Hyejin asked. They still outnumber us. They're still winning. Dr. Hwa-young, monitoring the battle from the science station, had the answer. They're not retreating because they're losing. They're retreating because they're learning too slowly. She explained her analysis. Devourers survive by adapting faster than their enemies can develop new tactics. But we're adapting faster than they are. Every hour, we develop new weapons and strategies. They can't keep up. So we won? No, Dr. Hwa-young said grimly. We passed their first test. Now they'll send everything they have. The 5th day brought a horror beyond imagination. The Devourer retreat had been a feint. While the defending fleet celebrated their victory, the enemy had been gathering reinforcements from the void between galaxies. 50,000 Devourer ships emerged from hyperspace simultaneously. All units. Full engagement, Admiral Hyejin ordered. This is what we came here for. The final battle made the previous days look like small skirmishes. Space itself seemed to catch fire as energy weapons discharged with the power of stars. Entire sectors of the galaxy's edge became impossible to navigate, as gravitational weapons tore holes in space-time. Taejin lost count of the losses. Ships died so fast that the computers couldn't track them. Entire species fleets were wiped out in minutes. The Vorthak Collective lost their entire military. The Luminian Empire saw their energy being scattered across light years. But still the humans kept fighting. When their ships were destroyed, they ejected in escape pods and signaled for pickup. When their weapons failed, they rammed enemy vessels. When their tactics stopped working, they developed new ones in the middle of battle. How are they doing this? Taejin asked during a brief lull in the fighting. Commander Insu, blood running down his face from a head wound, answered while coordinating the next attack wave. We've had 300 years to think about this moment. Every human who survived the last galaxy has been planning for this battle their entire life. On the 6th day, The impossible happened. The Devourers began to die faster than they could adapt. Human industrial capacity, spread across hundreds of star systems, was producing new ships faster than the enemy could destroy them. More importantly, every ship was better than the last. Lessons learned in the morning were incorporated into ships launched that afternoon. "They're faltering," Admiral Hyjin announced. "All units press the attack. Show them what happens when they threaten our galaxy." The final assault was devastating. 200,000 ships, crewed by every surviving species in the galaxy, struck the Devourer fleet simultaneously. The humans had developed weapons specifically designed to disrupt the enemy's ability to consume matter for energy. Without that ability, the Devourer ships were just very large targets. One by one, the massive enemy vessels exploded in brilliant flashes that could be seen from the galaxy's core. When the battle ended, less than half the defending fleet remained, but the Devourer threat was gone forever. The last enemy ship had been destroyed. The void between galaxies was empty again. Admiral Hyjin's final message was broadcast to every surviving world. "This is Admiral Hyjin. The Devourer fleet has been eliminated. The galaxy is safe." Repeat. "The galaxy is safe." Taejin stood among the wreckage of the largest battle in galactic history and finally understood what the humans had been trying to tell them. Sometimes, the only way to preserve peace is to fight so decisively that no one ever wants to fight you again. The humans hadn't refused to negotiate because they were aggressive. They had refused to negotiate because they knew that when the real threat came, there would be no time for discussion. Only action would save them all. 3 months after the battle, Taejin stood in the rebuilt council chambers on the station above Galactic Center. The room looked the same, but everything had changed. The old Council of 12 species had become the Galactic Defense Alliance of 43 species. New races had joined after witnessing humanity's victory over the Devourers. Others had emerged from hiding, admitting they had been preparing for the threat in secret for generations. Chairman Do-hyun still led the council, but his role had changed. Instead of managing diplomatic disputes over territory and trade rights, he now coordinated the massive reconstruction effort needed to rebuild galactic civilization. "The final casualty reports," he announced to the assembled representatives, his voice heavy with grief. The numbers were staggering. 12 million beings had died in the battle. Entire species had lost most of their population. The Vorthak Collective was down to fewer than 10,000 individuals. The Luminian Empire had been reduced to scattered, energy fragments that might take centuries to reform into conscious beings, but they were alive. The galaxy was alive, and according to human deep space sensors, the void between galaxies was truly empty now. Admiral Hyjin attended the council session as humanity's official representative. She looked older than her years, carrying the weight of command decisions that had saved billions of lives while costing millions of others. "The threat assessment," she reported, "is complete. Our long-range sensors have detected no Devourer activity in any neighboring galaxy. The nomadic fleet we destroyed appears to have been their entire civilization." Taejin had been studying the battle data for months. The more he learned about the Devourers, the more impressed he became with humanity's victory. They had consumed 17 galaxies over millions of years. They had never been stopped before. "How did you know you could defeat them?" Admiral Hyjin's answer was simple. "We didn't, but we knew we had to try." Dr. Hua Young presented her final report on human origins. The story was both tragic and inspiring. Humanity's original galaxy had been home to thousands of intelligent species. When the Devourers arrived, most civilizations tried to negotiate, to find some compromise that would allow coexistence. "The Devourers don't negotiate," Dr. Hua Young explained. "They don't even communicate in any way we understand. They simply consume everything and move on. Every species that tried to find a peaceful solution was destroyed. Only humanity had refused to accept that logic. When their homeworld was threatened, they didn't try to make deals. They built the largest fleet they could manage, loaded it with refugees, and fought their way out of the galaxy. Most of our fleet was destroyed in the escape," Admiral Hyjin continued. "Only a few thousand ships made it to this galaxy. We've spent 300 years preparing for the day the Devourers would find us again." The preparation had been incredible. Every human settlement was built with hidden shipyards. Every human colony included military training for all residents. Every human exploration mission was actually a scouting operation, mapping the galaxy for defensive positions. That's why you refused to negotiate with us, Do-hyun realized. Every day spent in diplomatic discussions was a day not spent preparing for war. We tried to warn you, President Noré added through communication link from Earth. We tried to show you through our actions that negotiation doesn't always work, but you interpreted our preparation as aggression. Commander In-soo had been leading the post-battle analysis. The irony is that your diplomatic traditions actually helped us. The alliances you formed to fight us gave us the organizational structure we needed to coordinate the defense of the galaxy. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Galactic Rim. Commander Jae-won appeared on the main screen, his face grim. We have a problem, he announced. Long-range sensors are detecting movement from the direction of the Andromeda galaxy. The council chamber fell silent. Tae-jin felt his heart skip a beat. Could there be more devourers? What kind of movement? Admiral Hae-jin asked. Ships, thousands of them. But the energy signatures are different from the devourers. These appear to be conventional vessels using faster-than-light drives. Dr. Hwa-young analyzed the data quickly. These are refugees, survivors from other galaxies that the devourers consumed. They must have been hiding in the void, waiting for the nomadic fleet to move on. How many? Do-hyun asked. Preliminary estimate suggests over 1 million ships carrying possibly billions of beings from dozens of different galaxies. The implications were staggering. The Milky Way was about to receive the largest refugee population in cosmic history, species that had lost their entire civilizations, carrying only what they could fit in their escape ships. What are your orders? Commander Jae-won asked. Admiral Hae-jin looked around the council chamber. Representatives from 43 species looked back at her, waiting for humanity's decision. The same species that had once formed an alliance to destroy humanity now looked to them for leadership. Begin refugee processing operations immediately, she ordered. Establish temporary camps in uninhabited systems. Coordinate with all species to provide food, shelter, and medical care. And prepare integration protocols for any species that want to settle permanently in our galaxy. That could take decades, Do-hyun pointed out. The resource requirements alone. Will be managed, President Naré interrupted from Earth. We've been building industrial capacity for 3 centuries. We can handle a few million refugees. As the meeting continued, Tae-jin found himself thinking about how completely everything had changed. 6 months ago, humanity had been the galaxy's greatest threat. Now they were its greatest protector. The transformation hadn't happened because humans had changed. It had happened because everyone else finally understood what humans had been trying to tell them. Sometimes the only way to preserve peace is to be prepared for war. Over the following weeks, the refugee fleet arrived in waves. Each group brought stories of worlds consumed and civilizations destroyed, but they also brought something else: gratitude. You stopped them, said Veltar, a crystalline being whose entire species had fled their galaxy in just 50 ships. In 10 million years of traveling through space, no one has ever stopped the devourers. You saved not just your galaxy, but every galaxy they would have consumed next. The refugee integration process was massive but successful. Human industrial techniques were adapted to build cities on airless moons and orbital habitats around gas giants. Species that had never met before worked together to rebuild their civilizations. Tae-jin found himself working as a liaison between the newcomers and the established galactic government. It was challenging work, but rewarding. He was helping to build something unprecedented, a truly galactic civilization that included beings from multiple galaxies. We estimate it will take 50 years to fully integrate all the refugee populations, he reported to Admiral Hae-jin during one of their regular meetings. And after that? She asked. Tae-jin had been thinking about that question. After that, we'll have the largest and most diverse civilization in the known universe, representatives from dozens of galaxies, hundreds of thousands of species all working together. Working together to do what? The answer had become clear over the months of reconstruction. To make sure nothing like the Devourers ever threatens anyone again. Plans were already underway. Human exploration fleets were mapping nearby galaxies looking for other survivors and other threats. Research teams were studying Devourer technology to understand how they had become so destructive. Most importantly, defensive installations were being built at key points between galaxies. We're not just rebuilding, Admiral Hyojin realized. We're expanding. Not to conquer, Taejin corrected. To protect. Every galaxy we can reach becomes part of our defensive network. Every species we encounter becomes part of our alliance. The final meeting of the old Galactic Council took place 1 year after the battle. Chairman Do-hyun stood before representatives from over 200 species, including dozens of refugee civilizations. When this crisis began, humanity refused to negotiate with us. We thought they were being unreasonable. We were wrong. They weren't refusing to negotiate because they wanted to fight. They were refusing to negotiate because they knew that when the real fight came, there would be no time for discussion. He paused, looking at Admiral Hyojin with something approaching reverence. They tried to prepare us for a war we didn't know was coming. When we wouldn't listen, they prepared alone. When the time came, they shared their preparations with all of us. They saved not just their own species, but every species in the galaxy. The chamber erupted in agreement. Representatives from hundreds of worlds applauded the humans who had once terrified them. Admiral Hyojin stood to address the assembly. We didn't fight the Devourers to prove we were strong. We fought them because someone had to. Now we've learned something important. Unity isn't built through negotiation. It's built through shared purpose. And what is our shared purpose now? Asked the representative from New Vorthak. Admiral Hyojin's answer became the founding principle of the new galactic civilization. To make sure no species ever has to face extinction alone again. As the meeting ended, Taejin reflected on how much he had learned. Humanity's refusal to negotiate hadn't been Agyar,